Joy and I, we're going to put ourselves up for questioning at this present moment. So you both are the investigators. So, you please feel free to ask us one question each regarding any topic under the sun. So we're going to get Marty to start.
I'll start with Joy. Joy, what was the greatest lesson you took out of boxing that you still apply in today's world?
Great one. Give me a second here to bring it all back. I've got two words that comes back. One is consistency and one is persistence. I remember when I was finishing high school, I was just, I think year 11 going on to year 12. And my high school coach is the one who actually said, you have a very good shot at becoming a good amateur boxer. But in those days, I had very weak wrists because I used to also play cricket a lot and I used to turn the ball around. So I would keep my wrists very flexible. And he prescribed me a set of exercises. And I'm a very lazy sod, by the way. Getting up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning because you're in school sports and slogging it out till 7 a.m. And I used to be in a boarding school. But consistency and persistence is what this gentleman drilled into me. And I followed it. I followed it all the way till I was about 28 when, I realized the fact that it was going to be the family householder, get into a corporate job route or follow your passion and be something. And that's when that consistency and persistence came in, that I've done it for so many years, 14, 15 years. Can I let it go? So it was a hard decision to let go, but I remember taking that. And as I went through my career, and I look back now, 30 years later, I look back and see that I'm a very good trier, if one may call it that. In fact, to a point where sometimes I have to actually talk to myself in a mirror to say that, dummy, it's time you stopped. Because I really don't know when to stop the trying. I keep trying, thinking the more effort I put in, there will be a different result. So out of boxing, other than the love of the game and the beauty of the leaders, sports leaders and individuals which has graced the sport, the consistency and persistence is what I brought into my work. I've not been born with a golden spoon, and it's something I'll use the word proud. I've worked my way up from a B school advertising executive to wherever I am today with Yusuf, partnering in a company. And it's only been because of those two. It's been consistently keep at it. Doesn't matter whether the rewards are coming on the milestones that you've plugged or not, because if you are persistent, water ultimately cuts its way through a rock, but it might take 1,000,000 years. So the question,
I love that.
Because you see, we will answer and say 1,000,000 years, human life is 86 years. But that's a question of perspective. If your effort, and I'll tie back to a bit that Lubna said, faith and belief is a very, very strong and intangible element here. If I were to take a spiritual side, nobody in the world of any sect and any spiritualism has ever identified or seen, nobody living has ever seen, and something that we call as God. We have details of it, which one individually is allowed to choose. So the same thing happens when you're consistent and persistent. You're actually making a conscious choice. And choice is the biggest intelligence factor that human beings are blessed with. When we choose to believe and we perform, we are actually adding additional energies. And now you can bring in law of attraction, universal energy, whatever school of thought we want. But that's what a sport does. And this is applicable, Marty, by the way, not because I'm talking about learning from boxing. A cricketer, a squash player, a tennis player. I mean, if you ask Venus Williams or, any of the Bjorn Borgs or the previous greats in tennis, they'll tell you, practice, 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 practice. Practice is nothing but consistency and persistence. So that's
well done.
Consistency and persistence is what I carry forward.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
for
outstanding. Thank you.
Awesome, Marty. Now I think I'm in the hot seat from you. Goodness.
Well, I'd love to ask you, Yusuf, in regards to a time in your life, because there's no straight up in life or business, but a time you went through a challenge and how you worked your way through it, even though at the time it was a difficult situation, because I think that's always great for the audience to hear in regards to strategies to work through things, because things don't always go according to plan. So I'd love to know one circumstance in your life that you've worked through something that was really challenging for you.
A very, very interesting question, Marty. Okay, so I would say I'm going to go back to perhaps the first time I actually sacrificed something, or rather sacrificed my intention to do something. So when I was in year 9, I was actually drafted into, when I was back in India, I was drafted into being an Air Force pilot, which was always my dream. And at that moment in time, so, there's the very few people who are chosen across India to actually go into the National Defense Academy to go undergo pilot training, from a very young age. I still have 20/20 vision, and I was a science student through and through. So I was drafted into it, and then I had to give up on that dream because my grandmother, I'm the only child of a single mother, and so my grandma, so my mom's mother, she was like, you're our only grandchild, and what if something happens and you die? And you're an Air Force pilot and stuff. So that was the first time I actually gave up on my dream to be an Air Force pilot. Do I regret it? I would say yes, I do. But sometimes it's so important to not to be bogged down by regrets, but to actually sort of move ahead, keeping them as the stepping stone to make yourself stronger from within. So what that actually brought out in me is, to a certain extent, and that to a certain extent made me so persistent, and I was just absolutely, I was like, I have to do it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go abroad for my further studies. So that brought in, okay, I was not able to fulfill my dream as a fighter pilot, but I'm going to go abroad for my further studies. And that's what actually sort of, put all the wheels into motion. And that's the reason why, after year 12, I actually ended up being in Australia for 12 years. And that's the reason why at this present moment, everything, every single choice that you make to a certain extent leads into something that is going to be happening somewhere down the line in the future. So that's the reason why I'm here today in Singapore. And at this present moment, looking at moving back to Australia. So I think to a certain extent, if I didn't, if I had become a fighter pilot, obviously I wouldn't be perhaps sitting here speaking to both of you lovely guests, and knowing Joy, and perhaps being part of my LinkedIn network and LinkedIn family. So I would have just been a fighter pilot, and I would have been flying higher in the skies. But it's important to sometimes have that rejection, accept it, move forward, because the finishing of something can be the beautiful beginning of another.
Beautifully nice. Answered. Thank you. And I want to add to that, Youssef, just briefly, because I interviewed a policeman just going back a few days ago that was shot twice, survived, and his father had said to him, go into a different division of the police force, and if not, go into something totally different. And he didn't listen to that advice, and actually caused him 20 years of distress. And I go, it's funny with our families, I go, it's sometimes what we think is soul destroying at the time. Like you said, you just don't know what happens that now has given you the ability to do what you do now. So it just, that story just came back to me, because I thought, wow, if he had listened to his dad, he might have been okay.
Love the questions. Love the questions, Marty.